Marcus Hale stared at the flashing red and blue lights reflecting against the suburban darkness, a chillingly familiar sight for someone who had already weathered the worst of a war zone. Having sacrificed his body and spirit over the years to defend his country, he sat frozen behind the wheel, his knuckles white from his iron grip. He realized with a sinking heart that his most dangerous enemy was no longer thousands of miles away. It was the reality closing in on him right here at home. The dashboard clock in his Ford F-15 glowed softly in the dark. The night air in Oak Creek, Ohio was thick with a biting chill that seeped right through the windshield and settled into his bones. Marcus Hale rubbed his tired eyes, his broad shoulders slumping against the worn fabric of the driver's seat. On the passenger seat beside him sat a small plastic bag from Walgreens containing a bottle of children's ibuprofen, some electrolyte fluids, and a cherry popsicle. His young daughter, Zara, was at home burning up with a fever, and his wife Elena was waiting anxiously for his return. Marcus wasn't a man who rattled easily. He carried the quiet, heavy stillness of a man who had seen the world at its absolute worst. As a former Army Ranger who had served combat tours in the Korangal Valley of Afghanistan, he had faced mortar fire, ambushes, and the agonizing loss of brothers in arms. He had been honorably discharged with a Silver Star and a shattered left knee that still ached whenever the barometric pressure dropped. In recent years, he had built a quiet, respectable civilian life. He ran a community youth outreach program, counseling at-risk teenagers and keeping them off the streets. He paid his taxes, mowed his lawn, and loved his family. But as the sudden, violent burst of red and blue LED lights flooded his rearview mirror, painting the interior of his truck in frantic strokes of color, a cold knot of dread tightened in his stomach. Marcus glanced at his speedometer. He was driving just under the limit. He signaled smoothly, pulling his heavy truck over to the shoulder of the dimly lit residential road, parking squarely under the sickly yellow glow of a street lamp. He shifted the gear into park, turned off the engine, and rolled down his window. Immediately, his military training kicked in. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, out for 4. He placed both of his large hands at the 10 and 2 positions on the steering wheel, making sure they were completely visible in the ambient light. Behind him, the police cruiser's doors opened. Officer Derek Harlan stepped out into the cold night air, his heavy boots crunching deliberately on the asphalt. Harlan was a veteran of the Oak Creek Police Department, though the word veteran, in his case, was a generous term for a man who had merely managed to avoid termination through union loopholes. Built like a brick wall with a shaved head and a perpetually clenched jaw, Harlan had a notorious reputation in the poorer districts of the county. He was a bully who hid behind a badge, a man who thrived on the power dynamic his uniform afforded him. He had accumulated numerous excessive force complaints over the years, all quietly swept under the rug by friendly internal affairs investigators. Trailing a few steps behind Harlan was Officer Brendan Cole, a young rookie fresh out of the academy. Brendan was pale, nervous, and still idealistic, gripping his flashlight a little too tightly as he shadowed his senior partner. Harlan approached the driver's side of the truck, taking his time shining his high-powered tactical flashlight directly into the driver's side mirror to blind the occupant, an old intimidation tactic. He stopped just behind the B-pillar of the cab, keeping himself out of direct sight, while his flashlight beam cut aggressively across Marcus's face. "License, registration, and proof of insurance," Harlan barked, his voice dripping with an unearned arrogance. Marcus squinted against the blinding light, keeping his hands firmly planted on the steering wheel. "Good evening, officer. My license is in my wallet in my back right pocket. My registration and insurance are in the glove compartment. I'm going to reach for them now. Is that all right with you?" The calm, disciplined, and baritone timbre of Marcus's voice seemed to instantly irritate Harlan. He wasn't used to people keeping their cool. He was used to fear, stammering, and panic. "I didn't ask for a speech. Just get the documents," Harlan snapped, his hand resting casually, but purposefully on the butt of his sidearm. Moving slowly and deliberately, Marcus reached into his back pocket, retrieved his leather wallet, and extracted his driver's license. He then leaned over, slowly popping the glove box to retrieve the vehicle paperwork. He handed the stack of documents out the window into the blinding beam of light. Harlan snatched the papers from Marcus's hand. He shined his light on the license, then looked at the back of the truck, his beam illuminating the custom license plate frame that read, U.S. Army Ranger Combat Veteran. A cynical smirk twisted across Harlan's face. "You a hero, Hale," he sneered, tossing the word hero like an insult. "Think those plates give you a free pass to swerve all over a municipal roadway?" Marcus frowned, his brow furrowing slightly. "I wasn't swerving, officer. I've been maintaining my lane and driving under the speed limit." "Are you calling me a liar?" Harlan leaned in closer, his breath smelling faintly of stale coffee and peppermint gum. "I saw you cross the double yellow line back on Elm Street. You look a little glassy-eyed to me. Where are you coming from at this time of night?" "I'm coming from the pharmacy," Marcus said, pointing a single steady finger at the Walgreens bag on the passenger seat. "My daughter is sick. I'm just trying to get this medicine home to her." "I don't care about your daughter's sniffles," Harlan said, his tone turning venomous. The rookie Brendan shifted uncomfortably on his feet on the passenger side of the truck, glancing nervously through the window at the bag of medicine. "I asked you a question, and I expect respect when I'm talking to you. Have you been drinking tonight, Marcus?" "No, sir. I don't drink at all," Marcus replied. His heart rate was beginning to climb, the adrenaline pumping into his system. He recognized the look in Harlan's eyes. It was the look of a predator who had already decided on his prey. It didn't matter what Marcus said or did. Harlan was looking for a confrontation. "Step out of the vehicle," Harlan commanded, suddenly stepping back and unstrapping the retention holster of his firearm. Marcus froze. The cold air suddenly felt like it was suffocating him. "Officer, with all due respect, what is the lawful reason for ordering me out of my car? I've provided my documents. You can write me a citation if you believe I swerved. I'd like to get my daughter's medicine home." "I said step out of the damn vehicle," Harlan shouted, slamming his heavy metal flashlight violently against the roof of the truck. The loud bang echoed like a gunshot through the quiet suburban neighborhood. "You are now impeding an investigation. Out now!" The sound of the flashlight striking the roof of his truck echoed in Marcus's ears, triggering a fleeting, terrifying flashback of an IED blast echoing off the canyon walls in Afghanistan. He squeezed his eyes shut for a fraction of a second, forcing the memory back down into the dark box in his mind, and took a deep, shuddering breath. He knew the statistics. He knew how these nighttime encounters on empty streets could end, especially for a black man facing a hostile, aggressive officer. Survival was the only priority. Zara needed her father to come home. "I am stepping out of the vehicle," Marcus announced loudly and clearly. "My hands are empty. I am moving slowly." He reached down, pulled the door latch, and pushed the heavy door open. As he planted his left foot on the asphalt and stood up, his bad knee buckled slightly, a permanent parting gift from a piece of shrapnel. He caught himself on the doorframe, a grimace of pain flashing across his face. To Officer Harlan, this slight stumble was the perfect excuse. "Watch it!" Harlan yelled instantly, grabbing Marcus by the collar of his heavy canvas jacket and violently yanking him forward. "Put your hands on the truck. Spread your legs. Do it now." "I have a bad knee, officer. I'm a disabled veteran," Marcus grunted, his chest slamming against the cold side of the truck bed. He spread his arms wide, placing his palms flat against the icy metal of the F-150. "I don't give a damn about your knee or your sob story," Harlan growled, moving in aggressively. He kicked the inside of Marcus's ankles, forcing his legs apart so forcefully that a fresh wave of white-hot pain shot up Marcus's thigh. "You people always have an excuse, always playing the victim." On the other side of the truck, Officer Brendan Cole stepped into view, his face pale under the street lamp. Derek," Brendan started, his voice wavering slightly. "He's secure. We can just run his plates and—" "Shut up, rookie," Harlan snapped without looking back. "I'm running this stop. Watch his hands." Harlan began a pat-down that was far beyond standard police procedure. It was a physical assault designed purely to humiliate and provoke. He forcefully patted down Marcus's torso, slamming his hands against the veteran's ribs, then dug his hands aggressively into Marcus's pockets. He pulled out Marcus's keys, tossing them carelessly onto the wet asphalt. He pulled out the leather wallet and opened it. The beam of Harlan's flashlight caught the military ID card sitting right behind the driver's license. "Ranger, huh?" Harlan scoffed, holding the ID up to the light. "What did you do? Scrub the latrines? Peel potatoes for the real men? I know guys like you. Stolen valor is a crime, you know." Marcus's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. He thought of his team leader, Sergeant Morales, who had bled to death in his arms while waiting for a medevac. The disrespect was a physical blow sharper than any punch. "I served combat tours with the 75th Ranger Regiment," Marcus stated, his voice a low, dangerous rumble, though he kept his body entirely still. "My honorable discharge and D-214 are in the glove box. I have been completely compliant. Why are you treating me like a criminal?" "Because you're acting like one," Harlan shouted, though Marcus hadn't moved an inch. The commotion had begun to disturb the quiet neighborhood. Porch lights began to flick on one by one, cutting through the darkness. The loud slam of the flashlight and Harlan's yelling had drawn the attention of the residents. An older woman, Mrs. Patterson, stepped out onto her porch, tightening her robe around her waist. A few houses down, a teenage boy named Jordan Ellis, a high school junior who regularly attended Marcus's youth center to play basketball and escape his troubled home life, had just been taking out the trash. Jordan dropped the garbage bags when he recognized the familiar red Ford F-15. Oh. He recognized the broad stoic shoulders of the man pressed against it. "Mr. Hale," Jordan muttered to himself. Panic immediately set in. Jordan had grown up in a neighborhood where the police were not viewed as protectors. He knew immediately that the situation was bad. He pulled his smartphone from his hoodie pocket, activated the camera, and began walking quickly toward the scene, hitting record. "Hey," Jordan shouted, his voice cracking slightly with adolescent anxiety. "What are you doing to him? That's Mr. Hale!" Harlan whipped his head around, the beam of his flashlight blinding the teenager. "Back off, kid. This is official police business. Return to your home, or you'll be cited for interfering." "I'm on a public sidewalk," Jordan yelled back, holding the phone up high, the red recording dot glowing brightly in the dark. "I have a right to record. Mr. Hale, are you okay?" Marcus turned his head slightly, trying to offer a reassuring look to the boy. "I'm okay, Jordan. Just stay back. Stay calm. Keep recording." The presence of the camera infuriated Harlan. His absolute authority in the dark was being challenged by a kid with a smartphone, and the man he was currently trying to break was showing no signs of fear. Harlan's ego, fragile and monstrous, could not handle the defiance. If he let this go, he would look weak in front of the rookie, weak in front of the neighborhood, and weak in front of a man he despised for no logical reason other than the color of his skin and the quiet dignity he carried. "You're inciting a riot," Harlan screamed into Marcus's ear, though it was literally just an old woman on her porch and a single teenager on the sidewalk. "That's it. You're under arrest." "For what?" Marcus asked, his voice ringing out clearly, intentionally projecting so the phone camera would pick it up. "What is the charge, officer? I have committed no crime. I am completely compliant. I am not resisting." "Resisting arrest," Harlan bellowed, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. He grabbed Marcus's left arm, the one with the shoulder torn by shrapnel years ago, and violently wrenched it backward toward his shoulder blades. The sudden unnatural torque tore through Marcus's scar tissue like a hot knife. An involuntary grunt of immense pain escaped Marcus's lips, his body instinctively tensed against the agonizing jolt in his shoulder. "Stop resisting!" Harlan screamed, taking Marcus's natural flinch of pain as the excuse he needed. "He's fighting back, Brendan. Get over here." "I am not fighting back," Marcus shouted, his voice finally losing its calm cadence, replaced by the booming, commanding tone of an army sergeant trying to control a chaotic battlefield. He forced his body to go limp, absorbing the excruciating pain in his shoulder. He knew that if he threw Harlan off, which his training would allow him to do in a matter of seconds, he would be shot dead right there on the suburban street. "My hands are visible. I am complying. Do not break my arm." Damn. Brendan rushed over, his face stricken with panic. He grabbed Marcus's other arm, though his grip was hesitant. "Derek, wait. He's not fighting," Brendan pleaded, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "The kid is recording us. The whole street is waking up. We don't have probable cause for an arrest." "I said he's resisting," Harlan roared, totally unhinged by the loss of control. He shoved his knee hard into the back of Marcus's good leg, trying to force the larger man to the ground. Marcus, relying on sheer willpower and a high pain tolerance forged in the mountains of Afghanistan, locked his knees and remained standing. He turned his face toward Jordan's camera. "My name is Marcus Hale," he shouted, ensuring the microphone caught every word. "I am a disabled veteran. I am unarmed. I am not resisting. This officer is trying to injure me." Jordan, now joined by two other neighbors who had walked down their driveways in their pajamas, was crying but held the phone steady. "Leave him alone. He runs the youth center. He's a good man." Harlan let go of Marcus's arm with one hand and reached down to his duty belt. He bypassed his handcuffs. He bypassed his baton. He drew his brightly colored taser, pressing the cold plastic muzzle directly against the base of Marcus's spine. "I'm going to light you up, boy," Harlan hissed, his voice trembling with adrenaline and rage. "You're going to ride the lightning right here on the pavement. Last chance. On the ground. If you tase him, you're going to kill him. He has a heart condition." Elena Hale's voice suddenly pierced the night. Marcus's blood ran completely cold. He turned his head as far as Harlan's grip would allow. Coming down the sidewalk wearing a heavy winter coat thrown over her nightgown was his wife, Elena. She had tracked his phone location when he took too long to return from the pharmacy. "Elena, stay back," Marcus commanded, real fear entering his voice for the first time. "Do not come closer." "Get back, lady, or you're going in cuffs too." Harlan pointed the taser blindly in Elena's direction. The red laser sight danced wildly across the woman's chest. "Derek, stop!" Brendan yelled, finally stepping between Harlan's taser and Marcus's wife. The young rookie's hands were raised. "This is completely out of control. Put the taser away." "You're finished, Cole. I'll have your badge by morning," Harlan spat, shoving his partner aside. He pressed the taser back into Marcus's back. "Down. Now." The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. A tragedy was seconds away from unfolding. Harlan's finger tightened on the trigger mechanism of the taser. Marcus braced himself for the debilitating electrical shock, praying his heart would hold out. Then a sound cut through the shouting. It was the deep, aggressive roar of a massive engine. Tires squealed at the end of the block. Headlights, blindingly bright, swerved around the corner, illuminating the entire scene like a Hollywood set. A sleek, black, unmarked Ford Explorer Interceptor tore down the residential street, ignoring the speed limit entirely. It didn't have a light bar on the roof, but hidden strobe lights in the grille and windshield were flashing in a frantic red and blue pattern. The SUV didn't politely pull over behind Harlan's cruiser. Instead, it aggressively swerved into the opposing lane, jumped the curb slightly, and slammed its brakes, coming to a screeching diagonal halt directly in front of Marcus's F-150, effectively barricading Harlan, Brendan, and Marcus in between the vehicles. The sudden, violent arrival of the massive SUV froze everyone in their tracks. Harlan hesitated, lowering the taser, slightly shielding his eyes from the Explorer's high beams. The heavy driver's side door of the Interceptor opened with a solid thud. Heavy, polished leather boots hit the pavement. The man who stepped out of the vehicle was not a patrolman. He was tall, standing over 6'2", with broad shoulders, hidden beneath a tailored, immaculate midnight blue trench coat. Underneath the coat, the gold stars of a captain gleamed under the streetlights. His hair was a distinguished steely gray, cut close in a military fade. His face was a map of hard years and harsh decisions lined with deep creases around his eyes, and a jaw that looked like it was carved from granite. This was Captain Victor Lang. Lang was a legend in the county. He had served decades in law enforcement, working his way up from a beat cop in the most dangerous wards of the city to precinct commander. Before that, he had served in the military during the Gulf War. He was notoriously fair, brutally strict, and possessed a legendary hatred for cops who abused their power. For some time, Lang had been quietly running an internal off-the-books investigation into Officer Derek Harlan, having grown sick of the union covering up the man's brutality. That night, Lang had been listening to the dispatch radio in his office when he heard Harlan call in the license plate of Marcus's F-150. Lang had recognized the name of the registered owner immediately. Captain Lang didn't shout. He didn't rush. He walked with a terrifying absolute authority toward the back of the pickup truck. The crowd of neighbors fell completely silent. Even Jordan lowered his phone slightly, sensing the monumental shift in power. Lang stopped 5 feet away from the group. His ice-cold blue eyes swept over the scene. The weeping wife, the terrified rookie, the teenager recording the black veteran pinned against the truck in agony, and Officer Harlan holding a taser to the man's spine. Lang's gaze finally locked onto Harlan. The silence stretched for 3 agonizing seconds, filled only by the low hum of the police cruiser's engine and the distant barking of a dog. When Lang finally spoke, his voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the freezing night air like a razor blade. "Officer Harlan," Captain Lang said softly, the danger in his tone palpable. "Take your hands off my brother in arms, right now." The silence that blanketed the suburban street was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. The flashing strobes from Captain Lang's unmarked Ford Explorer cast long, erratic shadows across the asphalt, illuminating the petrified faces of everyone present. Officer Derek Harlan stood frozen, the brightly colored taser still pressed against Marcus Hale's spine, though his finger had unconsciously slipped entirely outside the trigger guard. "Captain Lang," Harlan stammered, the false bravado that had fueled his bullying entirely evaporating. His voice cracked, sounding incredibly small. "What? What are you doing out here? I'm in the middle of an arrest." Captain Lang did not break his stride until he was less than 2 feet away from Harlan. Up close, the sheer physical presence of the precinct commander was overwhelming. He loomed over the patrolman, his ice-blue eyes radiating a terrifying, contained fury. "I gave you a direct order, Officer Harlan," Lang said, his voice dropping an octave, possessing the dangerous calm of a bomb counting down its final seconds. "Holster your weapon. Step away from the man. If you make me repeat myself a 3rd time, I will consider you an active threat to a civilian, and I will draw my own sidearm. Do you understand me?" Harlan's face drained of color, turning a sickly ashen gray under the street lamps. His eyes darted frantically between Lang and the dozen neighbors now standing on their lawns, and Jordan, whose smartphone was capturing every agonizing second in high definition. Trembling slightly, Harlan withdrew the taser from Marcus's back, flipped the safety switch, and shoved it clumsily into his tactical holster. He took a single, unsteady step backward. Marcus, his left shoulder screaming in agony, slowly stood up straight. He didn't rub his arm or complain. He simply turned to face the captain, his posture automatically straightening into the rigid stance of a soldier addressing a superior. Despite the immense pain radiating down his back and the residual adrenaline flooding his veins, Marcus's face remained a mask of stoic discipline. Captain Lang looked at Marcus, his stern expression softening just a fraction of an inch. "Sergeant Hale, are you injured, son?" Marcus blinked slightly, taken aback that the precinct captain knew his rank. "My left shoulder, sir. Old shrapnel wound. He wrenched it pretty hard, but it's not dislocated. I don't require an ambulance." Lang gave a brief, respectful nod. He turned his attention to the hood of the F-150, where Marcus's wallet, keys, and military ID were scattered like garbage. Lang reached out, carefully picked up the military ID, wiped a smudge of dirt off the plastic with his thumb, and handed it directly back to Marcus. "I apologize for the state of your property, Sergeant," Lang said loudly, ensuring his voice carried. "And I apologize for the disrespect shown to your service." Harlan could no longer contain his panic. His survival instincts, honed by years of manipulating the system, flared to life. "Captain, with all due respect, you don't know what happened here," Harlan interjected, his voice desperate and reedy. "He was driving erratically. I saw him swerve over the double yellow line back on Elm Street. When I pulled him over, he was hostile, glassy-eyed, and non-compliant. He refused a lawful order to exit the vehicle and then actively resisted arrest. I had probable cause. So, Lang slowly turned his head to look at Harlan. The look was one of absolute, unadulterated disgust. "Is that your official report, Officer Harlan?" Lang asked quietly. "Yes, sir. That's exactly what happened. Ask my partner." Harlan pointed a trembling finger at the rookie Brendan Cole, who looked like he wanted the asphalt to swallow him whole. "I see," Lang said. He reached into the deep pocket of his midnight blue trench coat. He didn't pull out a weapon or a pair of handcuffs. Instead, he pulled out a small, black digital voice recorder. He pressed a button. A crisp, clear audio recording began to play, amplified in the quiet street. It was Harlan's voice recorded just minutes prior. "Look at this fancy truck. Custom rims on a King Ranch. Who does this guy think he is? Bet you $50 he's holding. Let's light him up and see him squirm." Then a second voice, Brendan's, sounding hesitant and nervous. "Derek, he hasn't committed a traffic violation. He's doing exactly the limit." "I make the violations, rookie," Harlan's recorded voice sneered. "I'll say he crossed the yellow line. Watch how fast these guys drop their attitude when you put them in the dirt." "Yeah." Lang pressed the button again, stopping the playback. Harlan physically stumbled backward, hitting the side of his own police cruiser. His mouth opened and closed like a fish, suffocating on a dock. That's an illegal wiretap. You bugged my cruiser. The Union, the Fraternal Order of Police, has already been notified, and they have washed their hands of you, Derek," Lang stated, stepping closer, completely invading Harlan's personal space. "It wasn't a wiretap in your cruiser. It was an active internal affairs sting. I've had a parabolic microphone on you for some time, waiting for you to hang yourself. Your dashcam has been quietly transmitting its feed directly to my secure server since you clocked in tonight. I've been parked 2 blocks behind you with my lights off since you left the precinct. I watched Sergeant Hale drive flawlessly. I watched you target him. I watched you falsify probable cause. I watched you assault a compliant, unarmed citizen." "Sir," Lang leaned in, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper meant only for Harlan. "You are a disgrace to that badge. You are a coward who uses a uniform to terrorize people who are better than you will ever be." The reality of the situation crashed down on Harlan like a falling building. Years of bullying, of cutting corners, of protected excessive force had finally met an immovable object. He looked desperately at his partner. "Brendan," Harlan pleaded, his voice cracking, devoid of any of his previous authority. "You got to back me up here. We're partners. We bleed blue. Tell the captain he's taking this out of context." Brendan Cole stood rigid on the passenger side of the truck. He looked at Harlan, the man who was supposed to be his mentor, the man who had ordered him to lie, falsify reports, and ignore basic civil rights. Then Brendan looked at Marcus Hale, who was standing quietly enduring the pain in his shoulder, simply trying to get medicine home to his sick daughter. Finally, Brendan looked at the terrified wife standing on the sidewalk and the teenager holding the phone. The idealistic young man who had joined the academy to help people finally broke through the toxic culture his partner had tried to drown him in. "I can't do that, Derek," Brendan said, his voice shaking but growing stronger with every word. He looked directly at Captain Lang, snapping to attention. "So, Officer Harlan's statements are false. The driver maintained his lane. He was fully compliant. He provided his documents. Officer Harlan escalated the situation without provocation. ordered the driver out without lawful justification, and applied excessive physical force when no resistance was offered. I am willing to swear to this in a sworn affidavit. A collective sigh of relief seemed to ripple through the gathered neighbors. Jordan, still recording, pumped his fist silently in the air. "Traitor!" Harlan hissed at Brendan, his face contorting into a mask of ugly, desperate rage. "You little rat! You're dead in this department. No one will ever ride with you again." "He won't be riding with you, that's for damn sure," Lang snapped, cutting off Harlan's tirade. The captain took a step back, squaring his broad shoulders, his posture screaming absolute authority. "Officer Derek Harlan," Lang declared, his voice ringing out so clearly that every camera microphone and every witness could hear it perfectly. "By the authority vested in me by the Oak Creek Police Department and the Chief of Police, I am formally relieving you of your duty, effective immediately." Harlan shook his head in denial, his hands trembling violently. "You can't do this here. You have to do this at the precinct. There's a process." "The process is happening right now," Lang countered coldly. "Hand over your weapon. Unbuckle your duty belt. Now." "I have rights," Harlan shouted, though there was no power left in his voice. "I want my union rep." "You'll get your rep from a holding cell if you don't comply with my order this instant," Lang warned, his hand moving to rest casually over his own holstered firearm. "You are currently a civilian in possession of a city-issued firearm, actively disobeying a commanding officer. Do not make me arrest you for insubordination and theft of city property on top of the civil rights violations you've just committed. Belt off." Defeated, humiliated, and entirely broken, Harlan reached down with trembling hands. The sharp click of the heavy tactical belt unbuckling sounded incredibly loud in the quiet street. The heavy leather belt, laden with the gun, the taser, the handcuffs, and the pepper spray, the tools of the power he had so gleefully abused, slid off his hips and hit the asphalt with a heavy, unceremonious thud. "Now, the badge," Lang demanded, pointing a single finger at the silver shield pinned to Harlan's chest. Tears of rage and humiliation welled up in Harlan's eyes. He fumbled with the clasp, pricking his own finger in his haste, before pulling the badge free and tossing it onto the hood of the cruiser. "You're making a mistake, Captain," Harlan muttered weakly, refusing to make eye contact. "Get in the back of my Explorer, Mr. Harlan," Lang ordered, emphasizing the loss of title. "You will sit there quietly while I secure this scene. Then you will be transported to the county jail, where you will be booked for aggravated assault, deprivation of rights under color of law, and filing a false police report." Harlan turned, his shoulders slumped, looking like a deflated balloon. Without another word, he trudged over to the massive black SUV, opened the rear door, and climbed into the back, the heavy door slamming shut behind him, sealing his fate. Captain Lang turned his attention back to the scene. He looked at rookie Brendan Cole. "Officer Cole?" Brendan swallowed hard. "Yes, Captain. You stood up. It took you a minute, but you stood up when it counted. Pick up Mr. Harlan's duty gear and secure it in the trunk of your cruiser, then wait for my instructions." "Yes, sir," Brendan said, moving quickly to comply. A visible weight lifted from his young shoulders. Lang finally turned back to Marcus Hale. The intense commanding aura of the captain faded, replaced by genuine exhaustion and deep empathy. He stepped forward and extended his hand. Marcus, though still in pain, reached out and gripped the captain's hand firmly. "Sergeant Hale," Lang said quietly, his voice full of regret. "I cannot apologize enough for what happened here tonight. You served this country with honor, and you came home to be treated like an enemy combatant by a man who isn't fit to shine your boots. It's a disgrace to the uniform I wear." "I appreciate your intervention, Captain," Marcus said, his voice steady, though the adrenaline crash was beginning to make his hands shake slightly. "But you didn't just save me tonight. You saved him from making a mistake that would have ruined both our lives." "Marcus!" Elena broke through the invisible barrier of the standoff, running down the sidewalk and throwing her arms around her husband's neck. She buried her face in his heavy canvas jacket, her shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. Marcus wrapped his good arm around her, kissing the top of her head, closing his eyes as he breathed in the scent of her hair. "I'm okay, Elena. I'm okay," he whispered, holding her tight. "It's over." Lang stepped back, giving the couple their space. He looked over at the teenager on the sidewalk. Jordan was still holding the phone, though he had lowered it slightly. "Son," Lang called out gently. Jordan jumped, looking nervous. "Yes, sir." "You did a brave thing tonight. You stood your ground. What's your name?" "Jordan, sir. Jordan Ellis." "Well, Jordan Ellis, I want you to hit save on that video. Back it up to the cloud. Tomorrow morning, I want you to come down to the precinct and email a copy directly to my desk. That video is going to ensure that man never puts a badge on again." Jordan nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, sir, I will." So, Lang looked back at Marcus, who was gently pulling away from his wife. "Sergeant, I'm going to have Officer Cole drive your truck home for you. You are in no condition to drive with that shoulder. I'll personally drive you and your wife behind him." Marcus looked at the Walgreens bag still sitting on the passenger seat of his truck. "My daughter, she's sick. She's waiting for her medicine." Lang nodded, his eyes softening. "Then let's get you home, Marcus. Your family has waited long enough." The interior of Captain Victor Lang's unmarked Ford Explorer was a stark contrast to the freezing, chaotic street they had just left behind. It was immaculately clean, smelling faintly of leather and black coffee. The heater blasted a steady, comforting stream of warm air. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, his massive frame slouched slightly to favor his throbbing left shoulder. In the back seat, Elena leaned forward, her hand resting reassuringly on the back of Marcus's neck, her thumb tracing small, soothing circles against his skin. Lang drove with the same quiet, absolute authority he carried himself with. He didn't use the sirens, but the heavy SUV moved swiftly through the dark, quiet streets of Oak Creek, followed closely by the headlights of Marcus's F-150, currently being driven by a very subdued Officer Brendan Cole. "The adrenaline is going to wear off soon, Sergeant," Lang said softly, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "When it does, that shoulder is going to light up like a Roman candle. You need to have it looked at. I can detour to Oak Creek Memorial right now. It wouldn't be a problem." "Dear." "No, sir," Marcus replied, his voice raspy from the shouting. He gripped the plastic Walgreens bag resting on his lap. "Zara needs this. Her fever was spiking before I left. The hospital can wait until morning. I just need to be in my own house." Lang gave a single understanding nod. "I know the feeling. After Ramadi, I couldn't stand the smell of sterile rooms for years. Home is the best medicine." When they finally pulled into the Hale driveway, Brendan parked the F-150 on the street, carefully brought the keys over to Lang, and stood awkwardly on the sidewalk, looking like a ghost in his uniform. "Go back to the precinct, Officer Cole," Lang ordered through the rolled-down window. "Write your report. Be entirely truthful. Leave nothing out. I will read it first thing in the morning." "Yes, Captain," Brendan replied, his voice barely a whisper. He turned and began the long, cold walk toward the main avenue to hail a cab, leaving his patrol car locked at the scene of the arrest for the forensics team. Inside the house, the sudden warmth was overwhelming. Elena immediately took the medicine bag from Marcus and hurried upstairs to tend to their daughter. Marcus walked slowly into the kitchen, leaning heavily against the granite countertop. He let out a long, shuddering breath, the absolute exhaustion of the night finally catching up to him. He unzipped his heavy canvas jacket with his right hand, wincing as the fabric pulled against his left shoulder. He walked into the downstairs half-bathroom and turned on the harsh fluorescent vanity light. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, he saw a man who looked older than he had an hour ago. He carefully slid his shirt off his shoulder. The skin around his old shrapnel scar was already turning a deep, angry shade of mottled purple and black. The physical pain was severe, but the psychological ache was heavier. He had fought for a country that on nights like this felt like it didn't want him. He had survived the Korengal Valley, only to be terrorized in his own zip code by a man sworn to protect him. He splashed cold water on his face, gripping the edges of the porcelain sink. "I survived," he reminded himself. "I am home. Zara is safe." Miles away, the cold reality of justice was just beginning to unfold in the basement of the 4th Precinct. Derek Harlan sat shivering in a sterile concrete holding cell. His tailored uniform, his heavy-duty belt, and his silver badge were gone. He was wearing a thin, scratchy, high-visibility orange jumpsuit issued by the county jail. The heavy steel door of his cell clattered loudly as the locking mechanism disengaged. Captain Lang stepped into the cell. He hadn't changed out of his suit or his trench coat. He held a manila folder in his right hand. Harlan scrambled to his feet, his eyes wide looking for any shred of the camaraderie that usually protected cops in trouble. "Captain, please. You have to let me make a call. I need my union representative. This is a misunderstanding. I panicked. It was dark. I thought he was reaching for something." "Stop talking, Mr. Harlan," Lang commanded, his voice devoid of any emotion. It was the cold, clinical tone of an exterminator examining a pest. "The time for spinning lies ended the moment I pulled up to that curb." Lang opened the manila folder and extracted a single sheet of paper. "I just got off the phone with the district attorney. He was very interested in the audio recording of your little preamble before the traffic stop. He was even more interested in the high-definition video that a brave teenager emailed to my secure server not long ago." "So, Harlan's face fell. The teenager. He had forgotten about the teenager's phone in the chaos of his own arrest. "The video clearly shows you assaulting a compliant, unarmed, disabled veteran who explicitly stated his medical condition to you." Lang continued reading from his notes. "It shows you drawing a lethal force alternative weapon without provocation. It shows you pointing that weapon blindly at a civilian woman. Your partner, Officer Cole, has just submitted a sworn affidavit completely contradicting your version of events and detailing your explicit instructions to falsify probable cause." Harlan slumped back onto the rigid metal cot, putting his head in his hands. "My career, it's over." "Your career?" Lang scoffed, a flash of pure anger finally breaking through his icy exterior. "You think this is about your pension? You think this is an administrative error? Mr. Harlan, you are being charged with aggravated assault under the color of law, false imprisonment, and deprivation of civil rights. The district attorney is bypassing a grand jury and taking this directly to a federal judge in the morning." Lang took a step closer, towering over the broken man. "You wore the same badge I wear," Lang said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, vibrating frequency. "You used it as a shield to terrorize a man who bled for this country. You made a mockery of every honest cop who puts on this uniform to do right by their community. The union isn't coming for you. The benevolent association isn't coming for you. I am going to personally ensure that you go to federal prison, Derek. And when you get there, you'll find out exactly what it feels like to be completely powerless." Lang turned on his heel and walked out of the cell. The heavy steel door slammed shut with a deafening finality, the locks engaging with a heavy metallic clunk, leaving Derek Harlan alone in the dark with the ruins of the life he had destroyed with his own arrogance. In the weeks that followed the night when flashing lights shattered the peace of that quiet suburban street, the Oak Creek Community Youth Center was a chaotic symphony of squeaking rubber soles, bouncing basketballs, and the echoing shouts of teenagers playing dodgeball in the gymnasium. The air smelled of floor wax and adolescent sweat. It was loud, it was messy, and to Marcus Hale, it was the best sound in the world. Marcus stood near the scorer's table watching the games, His left arm was secured tightly in a black canvas medical sling, the result of a partially torn rotator cuff that would require months of intense physical therapy. Despite the constant dull ache in his shoulder, he stood tall, his posture perfect, his eyes tracking the kids on the court. A stray basketball bounced wildly off the rim and rolled toward the sidelines. Jordan Ellis, wearing a faded high school basketball jersey, sprinted after it. He scooped the ball up with one hand, tossing it back to the court, and jogged over to Marcus. "How's the wing, Mr. Marcus?" Jordan asked, breathless, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. "It's getting there, Jordan. Doc says I'll be doing push-ups again by spring." Marcus smiled, clapping his good hand on the teenager's shoulder. "You're playing a sloppy zone defense out there, by the way. You need to keep your feet moving." Jordan laughed. Yeah, coach. I'm trying." He paused, his expression turning slightly more serious. "Hey, did you see the news this morning?" Marcus's smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of solemn understanding. "I did." That morning, the local news networks had broadcast the sentencing of former officer Derek Harlan. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, the dashcam footage, the internal affairs recording, Brendan Cole's testimony, and the viral video captured by Jordan himself, Harlan's defense attorney had advised him to take a plea deal to avoid a public, humiliating federal trial. The judge, citing the gross abuse of power and the targeting of a disabled veteran, had sentenced Harlan to 6 years in a federal penitentiary, permanently revoking his law enforcement certification. "You know," Jordan said, looking down at his sneakers, "a lot of kids around here, we grew up thinking if the cops mess with you, you just put your head down. You don't fight it because you can't win. They have the badge, they have the guns, but we won, didn't we?" Marcus looked at the young man. He saw the shift in Jordan's eyes. It wasn't arrogance. It was an awakening. It was the realization that the system, though deeply flawed and often dangerous, could be held accountable when good people refused to be silent. "We didn't win a game, Jordan. We held the line," Marcus corrected gently. "And you were the one holding the line. You didn't run. You stood your ground. You recorded the truth, and you used your voice. That's what bravery looks like. You saved my life that night just as much as Captain Lang did." Jordan beamed, standing a little taller. "Thanks, Mr. Marcus. I'm going to get back out there. Need to fix that zone defense before you bench me." As Jordan ran back onto the court, the heavy double doors of the gymnasium swung open. The noise in the gym immediately dropped a few decibels as the kids noticed the man walking in. It was Captain Victor Lang. He wasn't wearing his uniform today, nor his intimidating trench coat. He was dressed in a simple, well-fitted gray suit, looking more like an older high school principal than a precinct commander. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on Marcus. He walked over, extending his hand. Marcus took it with his good arm, gripping it firmly. "Captain, it's an honor to have you here. To what do I owe the visit?" "Just Victor today, Marcus. I'm off the clock." Lang smiled, though his eyes remained sharp and observant. "I wanted to come see this place for myself. I've read the reports on your community outreach metrics. You've dropped the juvenile delinquency rate in this ward significantly over the recent years. The mayor's office is terrified of you." Marcus chuckled. "We just give them a place to belong. When you treat these kids with respect, they usually return the favor. A lesson some of my own men struggle to learn." "Sabaita," Lang sighed, looking out at the court. "I wanted to give you an update in person. Harlan was transported to the federal facility in Marion this morning. He's out of our city. He'll never hold authority over another citizen again." "And Officer Cole?" Marcus asked. "Brendan is doing well," Lang replied with a hint of pride in his voice. "He requested a transfer to the Community Policing Division. I paired him with Sergeant Miller, no relation to the other one. She's tough as nails and twice as honest. Brendan's learning how to actually talk to people instead of barking orders at them. He sends his best, by the way, and his apologies again." Marcus nodded slowly, looking out at the kids running drills. "I appreciate that, Victor. Truly. But I have to ask, why did you go to all that trouble? The recording, the stakeout. Most commanders would have just buried a bad complaint. Lang turned to look at Marcus, his expression hardening into absolute sincerity. Because I remember taking an oath, Marcus, same as you did, to protect and serve, not to intimidate and conquer. When I came home from the Gulf, I saw guys who let the power go to their heads, guys who brought the war back home with them. It poisoned everything. When I saw what Harlan was doing to this neighborhood, to my city, I couldn't let it stand. A badge is a sacred trust. When a man uses it to bully the vulnerable, he becomes a worse threat than any criminal on the street. Lang reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, heavy coin. It was a military challenge coin bearing the crest of the 75th Ranger Regiment on one side and the shield of the Oak Creek Police Department on the other. He pressed it into Marcus's palm. You showed more discipline and honor on that street corner while in agonizing pain than Harlan showed in all his years on the force, Lang said quietly. You held your fire, Sergeant. You let the system work. I just wanted to make damn sure the system didn't let you down. Marcus looked down at the heavy brass coin in his hand, feeling the weight of the metal and the immense unspoken respect it carried between two men who had seen the worst of the world. He looked back up at Lang, a genuine warm smile breaking across his face. Thank you, Captain, Marcus said. Lang clapped Marcus gently on his good shoulder. Keep up the good work here, Marcus. These kids need you. Oak Creek needs you. As Lang walked out of the gymnasium, blending back into the bustling city, Marcus Hale put the challenge coin in his pocket. He turned back toward the basketball court, the dull ache in his shoulder suddenly feeling a lot lighter. The world was still a dangerous place, filled with unpredictable threats and deeply ingrained injustices, but as he watched Jordan sink a perfect three-pointer, the kids erupting into cheers, Marcus knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The battlefield had changed, but the mission remained the same. Protect the innocent, hold the line, and never surrender. If this story of truth, courage, and ultimate justice made your blood boil and then cheer for the right outcome, please hit that like button. Stories like Marcus's remind us that integrity and bravery still matter in this world. Whether you're wearing a military uniform, a police badge, or just holding a smartphone on a dark street corner, share this video to spread the message that absolute power must always be held accountable, and subscribe to the channel for more intense, real-life drama stories every single week. What would you have done in Marcus's shoes? Let us know in the comments below.